Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the EPA proposes new carbon emission standards. We will hear from the coal industry, and then News 8's Brian Roach on your side, the consumer fraud investigator, keeping an eye on the people trying to scam you out of your money. We have a consumer update report. We'll be back in a moment.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, as you know, it's been widely reported about the EPA's new carbon emission standards that have been issued recently. Joining me is the CEO of the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance, John Pippy, also is a former state senator. What district did you represent?
The 37th, so actually,
western
Western
part of the
PA, the suburbs right outside of Pittsburgh.
Right in the old coal industry, right?
Yeah, well, part of it.
Part of it, yeah.
A little more south, but Consol
right.
used to have their headquarters there, and then they moved into South Point. So.
There you go. All right, well, let's start with the basic facts about these EPA regulations. There have been a number of hearings across the state, across the country, one in western Pennsylvania. Right. What was the purpose of those hearings? And well, I mean, first of all, why is this important? Let's go to the chase. Why should Pennsylvanians care about this?
Well, because the price of electricity matters not only for the consumer, for the family, but also for the manufacturing, the industrial base. Companies move out of countries that have high electricity rates. California's, because of their electricity rates, is seeing businesses literally depart quickly. And so it's a cost issue. But there's also now, we're at the point where it's also a safety and reliability issue. Mm-hmm. Because as we've seen, specifically coal plants go offline, they're not being replaced. There's been talk of replacing coal-fired power, but really the nuts and bolts aren't being done. And we're in a position now where, like the last freeze, we could be a scenario where we'll have rolling brownouts in a developed nation. That just does not make sense.
Mm-hmm. Now, is your argument because these EPA emissions standards, well, first of all, what is the effect of those standards? And then we'll get to the other considerations.
We've had what I call double whammy. Last year, the EPA proposed standards for any type of new power plant built. And those standards would require technology that's not mature or commercially available. So it's a de facto ban. They did that last year. So no new coal plants are being built under those proposed standards. This year, they went to existing fossil fuel plants, and specifically greenhouse gas standards that will not be able to be met under the rules that are being proposed and at the levels. And that's really the difference. We're trying to bring this debate back to the middle. The EPA wants a 42% reduction in CO2 standards in Pennsylvania. We can get to about 22%. We can get halfway there. And so that's really the argument we're having. The problem is if they're successful in forcing us to reach a 42% reduction in Pennsylvania, you won't see coal as part of the portfolio, or it will be at such a level that the price of electricity will not only skyrocket, the availability.
Let me make sure I understand your point. So obviously I get your point about if they try to meet these standards and you won't be able to meet them, then the energy capacity will be reduced. Right. I think that's a big point you're making. Now, let's go to how much of Pennsylvania's energy produced, whether it's for nuclear or for other kinds of power plants, relies on coal?
Right now, 40% of the electricity powering this right now is coming from coal. It varies. Sometimes it's 42, sometimes it's 39, but a solid number is 40%. And that's the key there, is as we go away, what will replace it?
So is your point that there isn't a substitute, a reliable, available substitute if these EPA, I mean, is that the thrust of your argument?
From a practical answer, yes, there is, because people say gas can potentially replace it. The infrastructure is available. You don't have enough gas plants. Renewables are 1.5% of our portfolio. They can't replace 40%. We can see growth, which is what we supported, a diverse portfolio. But we need adults in Washington right now to do the math. Last winter, not too long ago, they were talking about rolling brownouts. That wasn't speculation. It was within 500 megawatts of having to ask people to either eliminate or literally shut down electricity usage.
All right, I'm going to run to a break. When we come back, let's sort of try to gain some perspective on this with what's going on in other countries and, ask you from your point of view the environmental implication of all this, which is obviously very important. Talking with John Pippy, he's the CEO of the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back to the program. I'm talking with John Pippy. We're dealing with the EPA's proposed carbon emission standards. John Pippy represents the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance. All right, let's go to the environmental consideration. I hear this talk, and I'm not fully aware of all of its implications about clean coal. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, clean coal was in. It was the rage. It was the thing to do. Candidates for office were supporting it, and then, well, they sort of walked back from that. What's the debate about when we use the terminology clean coal?
Originally, clean coal dealt with how coal is burnt in a power plant, and
right.
Specifically, back in the 80s, acid rain, smog, haze, those type of things. So we had a whole set of regulations that dealt with cleaning the particulates coming out. So a coal plant today is 95% cleaner than the ones that were built in the 16th, 70s, just like your car.
Right.
Because we've been so successful, they had to change the definition of clean coal, and now they equate clean coal with reduction in CO2.
CO2, okay.
And greenhouse gases,
right.
and associating that with climate change. And that's really where the debate is now, because that technology, while there are pilots and in the labs, and they're starting to work on it, isn't commercially available.
I got it.
So to require us to use the technologies that's not available, we believe is illegal, but that's a whole other debate.
All right, let's talk about greenhouse emissions globally. China, India, America.
Right. Well, the bottom line is China and India burn 5 times or have 5 times as much greenhouse gas emissions from power generation as does coal. We burn a little less than 1 billion tons. They're actually over 4 billion and growing. And if you include all the other fossil fuels, it's over 5 times. We are seeing a reduction in CO2 emissions. Pennsylvania, we're going to be at 22% reduction by 2020, which is not only a great target, it is leading the world. Mm-hmm. If we were to implement what the president is proposing, they always talk about flooding. It would be literally the width of the thickness of a dime,
right,
or less than 0.003 degrees. Why is that? Because by 2017, the rest of the world will be growing and using coal as the number one source of energy.
So your point would be that eliminating coal completely would have minimal effect on greenhouse emission.
And that is not my guess. That is based on the EPA's own numbers.
Right.
And so we're saying, we can get, we're seeing a 20% reduction already in Pennsylvania. If given more time, we can see a continued reduction. But put this all in perspective. Tell the people the truth. Don't talk about flooding when you're using your own numbers. That's not going to be the result. Reducing or eliminating coal from the U.S. energy portfolio only hurts the United States. It doesn't help.
All right, last question.
Yep.
You also, in the material that you've talked about throughout the state, about a more collaborative approach as opposed to a disputatious approach, right?
Yeah, I'm an environmental engineer. I got that degree because I believe in that.
Right.
If we work together, like we've done, for example, with the automobile industry, with the emission, we didn't require them to go from 10 miles a gallon to 30. They took steps. They're making us do a tremendous leap that's not available. What we're saying is continue to be a leader in reductions in efficiencies and replace the older plants with new plants. That's how we get to where we want to go. But that's not that doesn't coincide with the political dynamic in Washington, and specifically with the talking points that they like to put out there.
All right, thanks for the update.